Patriots at Bears. This is Sunday NFL. Marco, who do you like and why?
Well, I'm going to disappoint our forum viewers because I know they're waiting with bated breath for me to give a play because they want to fade me on a New England game. I'm passing, but I'm going to give you a lot of points in this game, and most of them do point to the Bears, but I'm not going to make an official play.
So what you're telling me is if this was the first week of the year, your handicap would have led you to have at least a strong lean on the Bears, but because you've acknowledged that you don't have a real feel for this Patriots team, you're passing.
Well, basically, yeah, but being the first week, the stuff I'm going to say wouldn't apply. This is a scheduling situation.
But what the point I'm making is one of the things we talk about in the podcast on Monday that I do with Dan and oftentimes Mike on the Today in Sports Betting podcast is we talk about how a handicapper it's like a golfer. He takes a swing, he hits it, it goes straight. He says, heck, that's good. Mm-hmm. He takes a swing, hits it, and it hooks, and he says, wait a minute, what did I do wrong? And then he analyzes it and swings again. A handicapper should do the same thing. Win or lose, how close was I on this bet? Were my assumptions right? If so, I'm going to repeat that process. If not, I'm going to question them. You're saying you're questioning the assumptions that you've had all along on the Pats, and it makes you say, I don't get this, so I'm not going to bet it.
Absolutely.
I love it. All right, but give me some handicapping.
Well, first off, it's a short week for New England. They played on Monday, and they got to travel for Sunday.
High-intensity game.
That is big. That was the biggest game of the year for them. First place. Not only did they beat the Jets, they embarrassed. I mean, it was like a statement game.
Agreed.
The other part of it is, you got to worry about the letdown for New England. Now, I know a Belichick team is well coached, and they don't make mistakes. So generally, they don't have letdowns. But they did have a situation earlier this year, sandwiched in between a couple big games, when they went into Cleveland, and they laid an egg in Cleveland, and it was sandwiched in between.
How much of that is reverse or hindsight? How much of that is they lost the game, so here's why? And how, because, why did the Steelers lose against the Saints? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can always reverse engineer that.
Well, that particular week was the only week I was correct on New England, because when we did talk about it on the Friday podcast that
you're saying, since I was right, that must have been the reason.
It was a perfect sandwich.
No, agreed. Let me bring up a really interesting stat, a trend. Whenever the Patriots have 350 yards or more, now I usually don't go into these trends that are that niche, like why 350, why not 340? Mm-hmm. But this number's so big, I wanted to bring it up. 350 yards is a good offensive performance. Mm-hmm. Now, typically with the whole kind of zigzag, hey, they did well, the public gets excited. Next week, especially with offense, next week you fade them because there's a little premium on it, there's a letdown. Really, we know that happens. There's a zig and zag in the NFL. Belichick is 43-20 ATS, and that's over 66%, almost maybe 70, after they have 350 yards. So when they have a strong offensive performance, instead of receding back a little bit or taking a step backwards, getting a little lackadaisical, they seem to build upon that. So I would say that the Pats are less inclined to let down than most teams, and I think that number backs that up a little bit.
Now, to go to the Bears for a moment, last week they were in a situational sandwich spot, and I did have a play on Detroit last week. They covered. The Bears were able to win but not cover. They came back from being down, which showed me something on this Bear team, because they were a team that was a total flat spot. They fell behind, coming off that big Philadelphia win, and then having this game up. So if you could play poorly and still win, it shows me that the Bear team's a little bit better than I thought they were.
And that's really perhaps one of the key points of this game is how good is Chicago? Because you've got the people who have been saying this team's fraudulent from week 3, mm-hmm. especially after that Green Bay win. And now it's like we're 3/4 of the way through the season. So my question is, how good are the Bears? Forgetting everything else.
I've made 2 adjustments, major adjustments on teams this year. I have to adjust on the Patriots. What I've always ripped them on was the defense. and the defense in the key games have played well. They played well in the Pittsburgh game. Forget the final score, because those were garbage time points when Pittsburgh finally scored in the fourth quarter. And they played an absolutely lights-out game Monday night. This defense is getting better by every week.
Which is something that we usually talk about in college basketball when you have a very youthful team.
Right.
Is throughout the year there's an upward trend. It seems like with the Pats that their extreme youth on defense, there's actually an extreme trend with them.
They're getting better. And the other adjustment is, and I was one of those teams that did bash the Bears and said they were doing it with smoke and mirrors earlier in the season, they are getting better each week. Their defense is playing solid. Remember last year, Brian Urlacher was hurt. Came back this year, big cog in that defense. But I think they're actually starting to get Mike Martz, and I've never been a Mike Martz fan, but they're starting to get that offense. So,
is that the case, or is it that they're running so much? I mean, it seems like that what I'm hearing from this guys that watched the game film is that the Bears are running effectively, and Cutler is being put in play action spots and not the key to winning the game, which isn't the Martz offense.
It's not the Martz offense, but they're executing the plays that he's drawing up. But anytime you have a running game that's working, it's going to make an average quarterback good, and it's going to make a good quarterback great.
So what's Cutler?
He's average.
At best. Bears are 6 of 7 as an underdog. I'm not a Lovie Smith fan, and I would think when they're overmatched, they probably wouldn't play hard. So that makes me like them here a little bit. What makes me like them the most, the Bears, New England has been outgained in net on the road this season. So if you figure yardage, there's a lot of computer guys that say, I'm looking at yardage. That's all I care about, because turnovers are fluky and all that stuff. And really what you're saying is by being outgained is you should be less than a 500 team.
I've gone down that road all year with New
I
England.
I hear you.
And I've brought that up numerous times on podcast and radio shows. So it's true, but I'm not going to buy into that one.
I'm going to make a last point that makes me, I lean Bears here, and I'm going to project, and I'll do it now. The Patriots 21-20, so the Bears getting the money. Slight lean. Here's why it's not more to me. The old school wise guys would say the stock for the Pats has never been higher than that Monday night game. Fade them. And if anything, the Bears are an undervalued team. It's a home dog. It's like a dream old school play. And there's probably a pro at pregame that we know is probably going to have the Bears on this. There's those
and
old.
He's not talking about me.
Yeah, there's those old schoolers. I think what the new school has taught us is sometimes that a team can be valued highly without being overvalued. And that's a concept we touched on a lot with Boise State this year in college football. His team was highly valued, but probably not valued enough. I think the Pats may be a team that the way Belichick got, I mean, they looked like a, it just came in my head. It was almost like an old Bill Walsh type. It was so, the regimented. It was almost like Brady, if he got 4 yards, you only need 3.3 yards, or per play to get a first down. In theory, if he got 4, it was like the other team was like on a bad play they were getting 4 or 5. Unless they really let down here, I wonder if you're just being a fool fading this team, that no matter how highly valued they are, they're not overvalued. That's why I have a lean, but the old school is going to love this. I'm a hybrid, so I'm going to say slight lean.
Okay, and I'm going to take an official pass. Sorry, guys, you can't fade me this week on New England.
It's your turn to continue the conversation in the comment section with Marco and me. And next up, we're going to be talking Kansas City at San Diego in an interesting discussion about the quarterback likely being out for KC and what that means.